What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we're going to be checking out the Transformers 1 Deluxe Class Alpha Trion. Surprisingly, this character's first ever big screen appearance, and easily shaping up to be by far one of the best looking designs that he's ever had. So as we check out the details, the head sculpt is looking wicked. Much like some of the previous Transformers 1 characters, it yet again appears to be incredibly G1 inspired, and with the exception of some additional battle damage, is looking to be incredibly close to the most recent teaser trailer. I think the same can also be said as we spin down to the rest of the robot mode. This guy's packing some incredibly sharp Cybertronian panels, and despite only being a mainline release, not only has he mostly been really well painted, but also surprisingly near enough filled in front side to back. He is also sporting a really neat piece of design where they have taken the beast mode head, split that into two distinctive components in order to recreate Alpha Trion's iconic cape, which from the front I think looks banging. So yet again, this is another solid entry into this Transformers 1 movie line, and with the exception of maybe bumping him up to the Voyager class price point, it will definitely be super interesting to see how the inevitable Studio Series release does improve upon this design. Whipping into this guy's accessories, up first, he does include a pretty mighty Energon battle sword. I can totally imagine him using this in order to electrify those Decepticons on the battlefield. The second and final accessory is a much smaller energized dagger, although surprisingly this does have a pretty big role to play once it does come down to beast mode. Both of these accessories are able to be stored inside this guy's cape, which I thought was really awesome yet again, although I can't lie to you guys, I think it would have been sick had he also included a tiny T-cog, as that is something that we do see him give to the Transformers in the most recent trailer in order to give them the ability to transform. Jumping into this guy's posability, despite coming across as being a cranky transformer, this guy is surprisingly incredibly well articulated. So to begin with, the head has no issues in looking all of the way up. It can then look down, tilt side to side, and also turn both left to right. The shoulders are packing ball joints, so in addition to kicking outwards, can also move both forwards and backwards. There's then a pretty decent elbow bend, a bicep swivel, unfortunately no real form of wrist articulation, but where he lacks, he most definitely makes up for when it does come down here to the forearm swivel. The backpack is surprisingly incredibly well articulated, so when it does come down to maximizing that waist joint, this should have no issues in spinning all the way around. The hips are packing a fantastic high kick out to the side and can also be moved both forwards and backwards. So when it does come down to this guy pulling the surprise splits on the battlefield, Alpha Trion should have no issues in doing so. The thigh can spin all the way around, the knee can bend pretty much to 90, and then finally he is rocking an incredibly deep ankle joint, which yet again, guys, allows you to get him into some pretty dynamic poses. But as I'm sure you guys all know by now, to access his true potential, now let's put him through the pose test. Transporting our way into some robot mode size comparisons, first up we are whacking out the Studio Series Transformers 1 Deluxe Class Optimus Prime. And to go back to my previous point, the only area where I do find this figure is lacking in would be scale, because judging by history, Alpha Trion has always been a little bigger, or if not the same size as Optimus Prime, although much like the mainline Sentinel Prime, I really wouldn't write this guy off just yet. Which, speaking of, here we have the mainline Deluxe Class Sentinel Prime. Now between the two, to be honest guys, I'm kind of torn as to which one is the best, because on one hand I really like the way this guy looks, but Sentinel Prime is packing an incredibly sick transformation, so I think I'm just gonna say they are both as good as each other. Next up we have the Transformers 1 Bumblebee, who is actually the perfect companion piece for this Alpha Trion, as he does specifically have an inbuilt transformation cog, which is something that Alpha Trion will gift Bumblebee in the upcoming movie. For a general size comparison, here we have the Studio Series Rise of the Beast Deluxe Class Bumblebee, and yet again, despite only being a mainline release, he's actually a pretty decent size in comparison to this guy. For a trip down memory lane, here we have the Transformers Legacy Alpha Trion, which was inspired by the original G1 design. Now I know they usually say that you can't mess with the original, but in this case I am going to go ahead and say, guys, that I do think when it comes down to an Alpha Trion design overall, the brand new Transformers 1 version may just be the best that this character has ever looked. Then finally, as no Transformers review is ever complete without whacking out the myth, the legend that is the Earthrise Optimus Prime, leading the way into this guy's transformation, for the first step, you are going to want to spin here to the side of the arm, where we are first of all going to take a hold of what would become the beast mode foot, and slide this here all the way down exactly like that. We can now make use out of that forearm swivel and bring this here inwards, and then what you'll do is begin to crunch upwards by making use out of the elbow bend. Again guys, now let's make sure to do the same for the opposite side. So take a hold of the beast mode foot and slide this here downwards, rotate around by making use out of the forearm swivel, and then crunch upwards by utilizing the elbow bend. Once that's complete, we can now take a hold of the cape, and what you're going to do here is lift this up and over the top of Alpha Trion's head. Now packed on the underside are two ports, which is now where you are going to begin to whack out the energized dagger and very firmly push that there into place until eventually it looks exactly like this. It is now at this stage where you can begin to combine these two halves directly down the middle, making sure that this does encase over the top of his robot mode head sculpt. Once that's complete, that tab there is now going to slide into that slot, so we are going to bring this up and over and snap this here into place. Now, stored on the underside of the shoulder joints are these two pretty big slots. What you'll do is just snap that section there into place, and again guys, now let's make sure to do the same for the opposite side. Snap that section in there as well. Then what we'll do is begin to spin down here to the base of Alpha Trion, where we are now going to make use out of these heel spurs, hinge these here upwards until they also snap into place. Then what you'll do is make use out of the shin guard and take a hold of the knee joint. You are going to want to push these here in opposite directions to each other until eventually this here is completely freed up. Once that's complete, we can now make use out of this joint and bring this here up and over the top of the thigh joint. We are now going to make use out of this hinge joint, because this is going to crunch downwards like this. Then what we're going to do is now make use out of the hip joint, slide this here forwards, and as I'm sure you guys would then guess, let's now do all of the same steps for the opposite side. So making use out of that heel spur, let's bring this here all the way back exactly like that. Then what we're going to do is take a hold of the shin guard and making use out of the knee bend, push these here in opposite directions to each other. We can now take the shin guard and slide this here over the top of the thigh joint just like that, and it is now at this stage where we are now going to make use out of this hinge joint, crunch this here downwards all of the way, and again guys, to kind of finish off the base beast mode, we are now going to make use out of that hip joint, slide this here forwards until eventually Alpha Trion should be looking exactly like this. It is now at this stage where you can begin to whack out the energized sword, and you are specifically going to want to make note of this mighty tab right at the very tip. Because, as I'm sure you guys would then guess, this is going to snap very nicely into the ass of Alpha Trion until he is now completely transformed. Charging through the battlefield of Cybertron, here we have Alpha Trion now fully transformed into his beast mode. And it is definitely interesting, especially when you begin to check out the head sculpt. Although surprisingly, much like the robot mode, this is looking to be incredibly accurate to what we have so far seen from this design. And to be fair guys, when it does come down to a deluxe scale beast former, this actually cleans up really well, especially when you begin to flip it here to the underside. I think it's really cool from a design perspective how the cape does form a complete brand new unique chest piece, and to be fair, the only visible part of the robot mode which I don't think should be on the design would be the fists. I'm thinking that maybe originally they had planned for those bad boys to slide into the back of the forearms, because even as we spin this guy here up to the top, he is packing some incredibly smooth and sleek mechanized panels, and surprisingly he is still incredibly well articulated, meaning that when it does come down to whipping the likes of Megatron on that battlefield, Alpha Trion should have no issues in doing so. Ramming our way through some vehicle mode size comparisons, we are yet again whacking out the Transformers 1 Studio Series Optimus Prime. Now I'm thinking that maybe when it does come down to scale, yet again Alpha Trion in this case is a little too small. I think to perhaps scale with this Optimus Prime, he would have to match the size as seen from the Voyager class Titan's Return Alpha Trion, which also surprisingly transformed into a full-blown mechanized beast. But with that being said, even when we do spin these bad boys here to the side, despite only being a mainline deluxe, Alpha Trion is still packing a pretty decent size. For some side-by-side comparisons, here we have the Transformers 1 mainline deluxe class Bumblebee, the Transformers Studio Series Rise of the Beasts Bumblebee, then finally the myth, the legend that is the Earthrise Optimus Prime. So, wrapping up on this review for the Transformers 1 Deluxe Class Alpha Trion. He is yet again another solid entry into this brand new movie line. To be honest, I have yet to be disappointed by any of these Prime changes. The only downside to this guy would be that much like Sentinel Prime, judging by that most recent teaser trailer, I do believe that he is going to be much bigger in the movie in comparison to how this figure right now stacks up alongside the rest of the lineup. But to be honest guys, Sentinel Prime was still an incredibly enjoyable standalone release, and I think the same can be absolutely said for this guy. I would love to get your guys' thoughts on this brand new Transformers 1 Alpha Trion. What do you guys think? I want to thank you all so much for watching, and until my next video, transform and roll out!